format. Okay. So we are starting matrices. Okay. Someone asked me, "Is this lesson hard?" And I told them, "This is how you're going to feel. When I first teach it to you today, you're going to feel like it's a little tough, but in a couple of lessons, you're going to look back at what we started with, and you're going to be like, that was so easy compared to what we're doing now." So I'm making you feel really good, aren't I? No, today you might be kind of iffy. Okay, you guys have to talk with really small voices, okay? So today might be kind of like, I think I'm okay. And in a couple of periods, you're going to be a rock star at this because it's going to advance and advance. But you're going to be fine, okay? Okay, so we are going to do matrices for quite a few days. And it's, you'll see some type of matrices on the final, I'm sure of it, okay? So the way we're going to use matrices in this class, you guys, is to help us solve problems, okay? So if you look at this right here, you guys, we've got 3 equations and 3 variables, okay? So if you look right here at this first part right there, look at the coefficients going across. You have 1, 2, 1, underneath 2, 1, negative 1, underneath 1, 1, negative 2. They call that a coefficient matrix. I don't think you're ever going to have to know that's a coefficient matrix. We never even write it by itself very well. That's not true, but you don't have to know the name. Then over here, 8, 1, negative 3, that's another matrix. They call that the constant matrix. Okay, this augmented matrix is the one that is important. So basically, see this equal sign? You just turn this into a solid line right there. So you have 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, or 2, 1, negative 1, 1, 1, negative 2, and then over here on the right hand side, underneath that thing right there, that's supposed to be an 8, and then 1, negative 3. So that's an augmented matrix. Okay, so you're going to learn lots of different ways to solve using matrices. The way that we're going to solve today using matrices is called Gaussian elimination. Okay, you're going to have to memorize all these different forms of solving. Okay, Gaussian is quite simple. Here's what you have to do. Okay, if your matrix is a 2 by 2, okay, and we're going to talk about sizes in a second, but if it's a 2 by 2, all you have to do is get a 0 right there in the corner. That's all you have to do, okay? If your matrix is a 3 by 3, which most of the time it will be a 3 by 3, then what you have to do is you have to get 3 zeros, okay, in those positions. The first place you're going to turn into a 0 is right there, that top one on the left. The second place you're going to turn into a 0 is right there. And the third place you're going to turn into a 0 is right there. Okay. Now, here is the formula for Gaussian elimination. Okay. You start with matrix A on the left, and you put matrix B on the right. Then this means, right here, this little arrow means you turn it into zeros in the left bottom corners, like these up here that I already showed you. And then on the right hand side you have numbers. So that's the formula, okay? You're going to have to remember the formula. I would never quiz you and say what's the formula, but there's so many different ways to solve this. If you don't remember what Gaussian is, then you're going to be in trouble, okay? Okay, so the first thing I want to do is solve this just using regular elimination, okay? So I'm going to call this matrix 1 and matrix 2, okay? So if I'm trying to solve this, you guys, using elimination, if I added these equations together right now, I'd have 2x plus 3y equals 8, which doesn't do me any good because now I've got a third equation with 2 variables. It doesn't do me any good. But if I took a negative and distributed it either across equation 1 or equation 2, then I'd have a negative x and a positive x, and those would go away. So equation 1 would then be negative x minus 2y equals negative 5. Then the x and the negative x cancel. 1y minus 2y is negative 1y. 3 minus 5 is a negative 2. Divide by negative 1 and you get y equals 2. the answer to this problem is going to be an ordered pair. The second number is going to be a 2 because that's the y value. Now what you're going to do, guys, is either go into equation 1 or equation 2 and put a 2 in for y. The easiest place is to go right there. That's my opinion. So this would be x plus y, which is a 2, is equal to 3. Move your 2 over, x equals 1, okay? And your answer is 1 comma 2, and then you're done, okay? Okay, now I'm going to solve the same equation, the same system of equations, but now I'm going to use Gaussian elimination. Okay, so everybody come over here to this side, and you're going to make a matrix. Okay, so matrix A is right here. If you look at that original problem, matrix A is just these things right here. So see those numbers right there? You just put them in. So it's just 1, 2, and then underneath is 1, 1. Then the equal sign is a solid line, and then on the right hand side you put a 5 and then a 3, and then close your matrix off. Okay, now I'm going to go crazy slow because it takes a second to kind of get through this, okay? So I don't think I've lost anybody yet. If I have, let me know. So now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a 0 right there, okay? I'm going to call this row 1, and I'm going to call this row 2. You guys, it's just like elimination. The only difference is you're doing it in a matrix. So how could I use a 1 and a 1 to get a 0? Well, I could just subtract them, right? So if I take row 1 and subtract row 2, then in that certain spot I highlighted, then I'd have 1 minus 1, which gives me my 0, right? That's what I'd want it. And that's going to become my new, what row am I trying to get that 0 in? It's in row 2, okay? So row 1 is not going to change because it's going to become my new row 2. So row 1 stays a 1, a 2, a solid line, and then a 5. To find, now I'm going to follow my formula. So I'm going to go 1 subtract 1, that's a 0. 2 subtract 1 is a 1. 5 subtract 3 is a 2. And that's it. That's all I have to do in terms of this matrix because I've got the only 0 that I need to have. So now what this means right here, guys, okay, it means these are my x's coefficients and these are my y coefficients. So that thing I just highlighted right there means no x, 1y equals 2. Okay, well, no x, that's not necessary, right? 0 times x is just a 0. So all that really means is y is 2. Okay, so then I come here and I say, okay, there's my answer for my y. It's going to be a 2. Once you've dealt with that bottom row, guys, then you move up to the row above that. So what that means is 1x plus 2y is equal to 5. Well, guys, row 1 didn't change, so that equation is exactly what equation was to begin with. Now all I'm going to do is just substitute in a 2 for y. So I have x plus 2 times 2 equals 5. That gives me x plus 4 equals 5. Move my 4 over, it becomes a negative, and you get x equals 1, and I got exactly the same answer. I should get exactly the same answer because it's the exact same problem. Why would the answer change if the, if the process changed? It wouldn't. It's the same problem, okay? Okay, let's do another one. Nice and slowly. Okay, so here are some things that you can do, okay? You can switch rows. So an example of a formula that would kind of explain that would be row 1 becomes row 2 and row 2 becomes row 1. So look how I've noted that. That means switch my rows, okay? The elements of a row can be multiplied by a constant number. So that would be like 2 times row 1 becomes my new row 1. So you could take a row and just multiply it by the same number. You can't multiply by 0. Then they would all become zeros and that wouldn't work, okay? Any row can be changed by adding another row to it, okay? Some things you can't do, okay? Some things you cannot do. is you can't divide one row by another. Okay? We will also never multiply one row by another. So don't do that. Okay? Just get used to the processes that I use and then kind of model those same processes as you do it. Okay? Okay, here we go. Nice and slowly. This one's going to be a lot tougher than what we did because now this is a 3 by 3. Okay? So this is called Gaussian. Okay, guys? So look what you do. Look at the left-hand side and fill in 1, 1, 1, solid line 1. Underneath that, the x is a 2, coefficient of the y is a 2. There's no z, so it's a 0, and then you have a 6. The x's are 3, 4, -1, and 13. Okay? Now I need to start turning things into zeros. Everybody look right here. The first thing I need to do is make that a 0. So how could I use either a 1 or a 3 to make a 2 become a 0? Well, if I multiplied this top row by a -2, then I'd have a -2 and a +2, and that would give me my 0. You guys with me? So it's just like elimination. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take a -2. I'm going to multiply it by row 1. Because then in this spot right here, this pink spot right here, then I'd have a -2, right? Then if I combined it with the yellow 2 that was there, then I'd have a 0. So I'm going to take a -2 across the top. I'm going to add it to row 2, and that's going to become my new row 2. Okay? So, since it becomes my new row 2, guys, I know row 1 doesn't change. So I'm going to go 1, 1, 1, solid line 1. Row 3, 3, 4, -1, 13. Now I'm going to underneath this formula, I'm going to take a -2 and multiply it across the entire top row. 1 times -2 is a -2, -2, -2, -2. Those were all 1, so when you multiply by -2, they all become a -2. Then I'm going to take row 2, and I'm going to write it down right underneath it, and then I'm going to see what I get. Well, a -2 plus 2 is a 0. -2 plus 2 is a 0. A -2 and a 0 is a -2. -2 plus 6 is a 4. Okay? Now I want to show you something, guys. The other 2 places that I need zeros are here and here. If I swapped row 2 and row 3, then those 2 zeros would go in the perfect place that I need them. And I can see that, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to say row 2 becomes row 3, and row 3 becomes row 2. That just means I'm swapping those. So my top row doesn't change. My second row becomes 3, 4, -1, 13. And my bottom one becomes 0, 0, -2, +4. Okay? Now remember the 3 places I need zeros in? It would be here and here and here. The bottom 2 are done, so now I have to turn that guy into a 0. And I'm kind of going out of order, but it's okay. You know. What can I do? Guys, if you have a 1, do you see how this guy's a 1 right there? Always use that 1. What can I turn that 1 into so that if I combine it with a 3, I get a 0? -3, right? How do I turn a 1 into a -3? Multiply it. So I'm going to go -3 times row 1, add it to row 2, becomes my new, everybody tell me, what am I going to put here? Row 2. So your row 1 doesn't change. You guys, when you use Gaussian elimination, row 1 never changes. Your row 3 is never going to change. You guys, the only row that changes is right here in your formula. Look at that. Row 2 is the only one that's going to change. So I'm going to take a -3 across the top. So I have -3, -3, -3, -3. Then I'm going to write row 2 right underneath it. And then I'm going to add them. -3 plus 3 is a 0. -3 plus 4 is a 1. Negative 3 minus 4, or minus 1 is a negative 4. Negative 3 plus 13 is a 10. Now you start at the bottom. Look what that means. No x, no y. Negative 2 times z is equal to 4. Divide by a negative 2 and you get z equals negative 2. So I have to write my answer as an ordered triple, and now I have to find the y and the x. So the next place you guys, is the row right up above it. So that yellow row that I just highlighted means 1y minus 4z equals 10. But I know z is a negative 2. So that'd be a negative 4 times a negative 2 equals 10. So that gives me y plus 8 equals 10. Move your 8 over and you get y equals 2. Now you go up to the line above that. So you just work your way up. Now I go to that blue right there. That means x plus y plus z equals 1. I don't know what x is. I know y is a positive 2. I know z is a negative 2 equals 1. 2 minus 2 is a 0, so that gives me x equals 1, and I've got my answer. 1, 2, negative 2. Okay? Are you guys following me? Look at my eyes for a sec. Are you following me? Give me some feedback. Yes or no? Raise your hand if you're following me. Let me see. Okay. Kind of. I don't have a single person that's like, yes. Do I? Okay. We're going to get it. Okay, grab your calculator. I'm going to show you something. Okay? Grab your calculator. See how x is a 1? Everybody go 1, store, enter. See how y is a 2? Everybody go 2, store, right, enter. See how z is a negative 2? Negative 2, store, right, enter. Okay? Now, I'm checking it. Do I have to check it? Nope. But if this is on the final, I'm sure as heck going to check it. So I'm going to go membar, enter, plus membar right, enter, plus membar right, enter, enter, and I was supposed to get a 1, and I did. Do the next one, okay? This second one right here. So I'm going to go 2 membar, enter, plus 2 membar right, enter, enter, and I get a 6. Do the last one. 3 membar, enter, plus 4 membar right, enter, minus membar right, enter, enter, and I got a 13. Am I required to do that? Nope. But it would sure be wise. Just like on your quiz, B-Day people, it would be very wise to check your answers. Yes, honey?
Sorry, so when you're checking, do you just go to the first, where did you get those numbers from?
So I got these numbers from my answer, and then I plugged it into every one of those equations. Are you okay? All right. Let's do the next one, nice and slowly. By the end of this question, when I ask you who's with me, I want all your hands to go up, okay? So really focus. Here we go. Okay, let's turn this into a matrix, okay? So across the top, we have 1, 2, 1, solid line, 8. Underneath, 2, 1, negative 1, 1. Underneath, 1, 1, negative 2, negative 3. Raise your hand if you understand that, A-Day people. Okay, great. The first place I'm supposed to get a 0 is here. See this 1 right here? Use it. What do I have to pair up with a 2 to make it a 0? A negative 2. How could I turn the 1 into a negative 2? Multiply it by negative 2. So I'm going to say negative 2 multiplied by that whole row, which is row 1, added to row 2 becomes my new, tell me, row 2. Yep. So look what I do. I do my arrow, and then I say the only thing I'm changing is row 2. So I'm going to take my row 1 and I'm going to write it down so I don't mess up. And I'm going to take my row 3 and I'm going to write that down so I don't mess up. Now I'm going to show work. Take a negative 2 across the top row, and you have negative 2, negative 4, negative 2, negative 16. Underneath that goes row 2, which is 2, 1, negative 1, 1. Then you add them together. Negative 2 plus 2 is a 0. Negative 4 plus 1 is a negative 3. Negative 2 minus 1 is a negative 3. Negative 16 plus 1 is a negative 15. Okay? Raise your hand if you understood that. Okay, if you understood that, you can do the rest of the problem, for sure. Because now I just keep doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Turning different things into zeros. So look right here. That's my next one. How can I do it? See this one right here? Use it every single time. Well, it's going to be easy. I just take that top row and subtract the bottom one. Or you could take the bottom one and subtract the top one. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to say row 1 minus row what? You tell me. 3 becomes my new, tell me, row 3. Beautiful. So do you see how row 1 doesn't change? So I'm going to keep it. 1, 2, 1, solid line, 8. Row 2 is not going to change. 0, negative 3, negative 3, negative 15. Now I don't even have to show any work because I'm just subtracting one number from another. 1 minus 1, 0. 2 minus 1, 1. 1 minus a negative 2, that's 1 plus 2, which is a 3. 8 minus a negative 3, that's 8 plus 3, which is an 11.
Which you're just adding the top and bottom rows?
I'm subtracting. So I'm going 1, subtract 1, 0. 2, subtract 1, 1. 1, subtract a negative 2. That's 1 plus 2, which is 3. 8 minus a negative 3, that's 8 plus 3, which is an 11. Who says I'm with you? Okay, good. Now the last thing I need to do is to make that a 0. Now the problem is I don't have a 1 anymore besides the one I just highlighted. That's okay. Turn the 1 into a 2 or into a 3 and pair it up with the other one. Now here's something I'm going to say that's complicated. Look right here. You cannot use row 1 right there. Okay, so let's write that down. Say don't use R1. Does anybody have any idea why you can't use row 1 right there? Let's say I did. Watch what I would do. I'd say, okay, I'm going to pair this with that. Just watch. So I want to turn him into a negative 2. So I'm going to go negative 2 times row 3 added to row 1 becomes my new row 3. Is everybody following me? Yes? Take a negative 2 across the bottom. Look. 0, negative 2, negative 6, negative 22. Write your row 1 underneath it. Look what happens. 1, 0, negative 5, negative, what is that? 16? No. 14. Thank you. So what I was trying to do is to turn this guy into a 0, which I did, but what else did I do? I messed up this 0. This was a 0, and now I changed him into a 1. You know what I mean? So you can't do that. It'll mess up numbers that you've gotten before. So don't do it. Okay? So we're going to use row 2 and row 3. So if I take a 3 and I multiply it by row 3, then I add it to row 2, because that would give me a 3 here and a negative 3 here. That would be my 0. Becomes my new row what, everybody? What row am I trying to replace that highlighted green with? Or blue, whatever that color is. 3 becomes my new row 3. Okay, so row 1 doesn't change. 1, 2, 1, solid line, 8. Row 2 doesn't change. 0, negative 3, negative 3, negative 15. Take a 3 across the bottom. 0, 3, 9, 33. Add it to row 2. 0, negative 3, negative 3, negative 15. Add them together. 0, 0, 6, and 18. You're done with your matrix because you've got your 3 zeros where you need them. okay? So now start at the bottom. This means 6z equals 18. Divide by 6, that means z equals 3. So your third number is a 3. Go to the row up above. Negative 3y minus 3 times z, which is a 3. I'm going to put it right there. I'm not going to even put a z. I'm just going to put what z is. So now I have negative 3y minus 9 equals negative 15. That gives me negative 3y equals negative 6. Divide by negative 3, and I get y equals 2. Go up to the top. X, which is just 1x, plus 2 times y, that's 2 times 2, plus z, which is a 3, is equal to 8. So this is x plus 4 plus 3 equals 8. That's x plus 7 equals 8. That gives you x equals 1, and your answer is 1, 2, 3. This is all we're doing today. We're going to take baby steps, okay? This is all we're doing. We're just going to keep going through these, okay? Let's do another one. What would you do without this lab? You'd be watching it at home going, really, lady? Really? What are you saying to me? Okay, here we go. Example 4. 1, 1, 1, solid line, 3. Underneath, 2, negative 1, 1, 2. Underneath, be careful. Okay, you got to be careful here. There's no x, so the 0 comes first, then a 3, then a 1, and then a 1. Okay? If you want to, you can switch rows right now. But look how easy it's going to be to make that a 0. So I think I'm just going to leave it. Okay? What would I have to pair up with a 2 to get a 0? A negative 2. What do I have to do to that 1, which is in row 1? What do I have to multiply it by to get that negative 2? A negative 2. So my formula is going to be negative 2 multiplied by row 1. Then I'll have my negative 2. Added to row 2 becomes my new row what, everybody? Talk to me right here. Row what? Row 2. Good. Yes?
So when you do that, instead of doing a negative 2, you just do a 2 and subtract it.
Okay, so a lot of people do that. It totally works, but if you mess up on one sign, everything from that point on is wrong. You know what I mean? It still works. My point is this. If I do it this way, then I'm going to take my row 2 and I'm not changing anything. So I have one that stays the way it is, and then I go through and change the other one. You know what I mean? If I do it your way, I'm going to have to change row 1 and row 2. Do you see what I'm saying? And that, I think, causes problems. Another thing is, people will just write that down like that, and then they're subtracting in their head. They're trying to go 1 minus a negative 1, which is really going to be a 2, but they mess up and put 0. Okay? So can you? Yes. Do I think you should? No. Okay? Your call. Okay. So come over here. I hope you guys all listened to that conversation, because that was a very important conversation. Okay? Okay, across the top. 1, 1, 1, solid line, 3. At the bottom, 0, 3, 1, 1. Take a negative 2 across the top, and you have negative 2, negative 2, negative 2, negative 6. Add those together. See how sweet it is, hon, to just add them, instead of like negative 2 minus a negative 1, numbers in my head. You know what I mean? Just add them. It's so much easier. So this gives you 0, negative 3, negative 1, and negative 4. Now I'm almost done, because the only other thing I need right there is a 0. And look how sweet. All I have to do is add row 2 and row 3 together, and I've got it. So I'm just going to go row 2 added to row 3 becomes my new row 3. So row 1 doesn't change. Row 2 doesn't change. Add those two rows together and you get 0, 0, 0, -3. Now this is weird. This on the left side means no x plus no y plus no z equals -3. What is that left-hand side really equal to, everybody? It's 0. 0 times x is a 0. 0 times y is a 0. 0 times z is a 0. 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. So I have 0 is equal to a -3. Is 0 equal to -3? No. So the answer is no. Tell me. No solution. Good. Okay, let's keep going. Is it starting to click in your head, you guys? 8A? Is it starting to get there? Okay. Okay, 8A people, I want to tell you something. Come to class on Friday with this mastered. A pro. Okay? It's going to make Friday a breeze. If you walk into class on Friday and you're confused on this, you're going to hit a wall on Friday. Okay? Here's another thing to anticipate with your homework. It happens every single time. I'll have someone, and it'll probably happen to every single one of you. You'll go through and you'll get the answer, and you'll check it, and it's wrong. And then you go back through, and you check, and you find the mistake, and you do it again, and it's wrong. And you do it again, and it's wrong. The reason is, one little sign, and the whole thing's over. So if you're sitting at a problem, and you've redone it like 3 times, and you still can't get it, put down your pencil and go eat some ice cream. You know what I mean? Just get away. Get away. Because if you sit there for 15 more minutes, you're just going to end up throwing your book at the wall, for sure. It's not going to work. So just go, let it go, come back with a fresh paper and do it again. Because it will drive you insane. People are like, I'm going to lose my mind. Okay? Okay, here we go. Nice and slow. Okay, across the top. 1, -1, -1, solid line 1. Okay? -1, 2, -3, -4. 3, -2, -7, 0. Okay, first thing I need is a 0 right there. How easy. All I have to do is add the rows together. Okay? Shh. Sorry, B-Day, I know you're all on task, just a little bit quieter. Okay, sorry, just whisper. Okay, so row 1 plus row 2 becomes my new row 2. Okay? Shh. Okay, row 1 doesn't change. Row 3 doesn't change. Add row 1 and row 2. -1 plus 1, 0. -1 plus 2, 1. -1 minus 3, -4. 1 minus 4, -3. Yes, honey?
Will you just explain that? I don't get what you're doing.
All I did is took my row 1 and added it. I added those together. So 1 minus 1, 0. Add those together, 1. Add those together, -4. You okay? Okay, so the next thing I need to be a 0 is right there. Use the 1. What do I have to pair up with a 3 to make it a 0? A -3. What do I have to multiply by 1 to make it a -3? A -3. You guys, I'm always going to make that top number a 1 for you. Always. Because if not, it's so much harder. Okay? So that's a -3 times row 1 added to row 3 becomes my new row 3. Okay? So row 1 doesn't change. Row 2 doesn't change. Take a -3 across the top, and you have -3, 3, 3, -3. Write your row 3 right underneath it. 3, -2, -7, 0. Add them together, and you get 0, 1, -4, negative 3. Do not use row 1 right now. It will mess up that 0. I need this to be a 0. Well, I'm just going to go row 2 minus row 3 becomes my new row 3. I could also do row 3 minus row 2. Okay? So I have 1, negative 1, solid line 1. Underneath, 0, 1, negative 4, negative 3. Row 2 minus row 3. Now watch. 0 subtract 0. 0. 1 minus 1. 0. Negative 4 minus a negative 4. That's why I don't like that whole subtract thing. Negative 4 minus a 4 is a negative 4 plus 4, which is 0. Negative 3 minus a negative 3, that's a negative 3 plus 3, which is also a 0. If you end up with something weird and you're taking a test or a quiz, I would stop. I would just literally freeze, and I would go back to the top, and I would just double check my steps. Okay?
Why would negative 3?
I'm subtracting. Negative 3 minus a negative 3. That's a negative 3 plus 3, which is 0. Okay? So now look at that bottom row. No x, no y, no z. That's 0. Equals 0. Is 0 equal to 0? Yes, it is. When? Always. Okay? So the question is the answer infinite solutions, or is the answer all real numbers? I'm going to tell you. Look right here. It matters. I'm going to turn this into a two-dimensional graph because it'll make more sense to you. Look right here. If the answer is infinite solutions, or all real numbers, then you have two lines that lie on top of each other. Looks like that. So is everything on that whole graph a solution? No. Is this a solution to that system? No. So it's not everything, but this line goes on forever. So it's infinite solutions, not everything. Okay? All right. How many more do we have? Okay. Row echelon form. So this is actually a second method in the same day, but it's almost the same. I have seen a row echelon form question on the final, just so you know. Okay, what's the difference between what we just did and what this is? Look at the difference. They want you to have zeros in the corners, just like what we did, but what's the other thing that they have? Ones across the diagonals. Yes, getting those ones, it's easy. It's easy, easy, easy. So it's really not much different than what we just did, okay? You have to know the difference between the forms, though. If they say row echelon and you use Gaussian, you're not going to get credit. You have to know the difference between the methods, okay? Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and start this. So across the top, 1, 1, negative 1, solid line, 0. Underneath, 2, 1, negative 1, 1. Underneath, 3, 1, 2, 2. We're going to do it in the same order, okay? So guys, I want to get a 2 right there. One of you 7 people, raise your hand and tell me the formula. What am I going to put right here? How am I going to turn that 2 into a 0? Go ahead, Lydia.
Negative 2R1 plus row 2. It's your new row 2.
Perfect. You're exactly right. No, set it on my seat. Yeah, and then push my seat in, would you? You're exactly right, Lydia. Good. So I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to not change my row 1, and I'm not going to change my row 3. Okay? Take a negative 2 across the top, and you have negative 2, 2, and 0. Underneath that, 2, 1, negative 1, 1. Now I'm going to add those together, and I get 0, negative 1, 1, and 1. Now I need to turn this into a 0. Well, that's easy. Take the 1 and multiply it by -3. So it's going to be -3 times row 1 added to row 3 becomes my new, tell me everybody, row 3. Okay, so row 1 is not going to change. Row 2 is not going to change. Take a -3 across the top and you have -3, -3, 3, 0. Write your row 3 right underneath it. Okay? Then you add them together and you get 0, -2, 5, and 2. Now I need to get a 0 right here. Do not use row 1. What do I need to pair up with my -2? A 2. What do I have to do to a -1 to turn it into a 2? Multiply it by -2. So I'm going to go -2 multiplied by row 2 added to row 3 becomes my new row 3. See the formula I keep writing? You have to write that formula or you won't get credit. So 1, 1, -1, solid line 0. Row 2, 0, -1, 1, 1. Take a -2 across row 2 and you have 0, 2, -2, -2. Write row 3 right underneath it. 0, -2, 5, and 2. Add them together and you have 0, 0, 3, 0. That's what goes here. Okay, everybody good? Now I need to get my 1s. So look at this. This guy's already a 1. See this guy right here? All you have to do is change the signs of the whole row. It's so easy. So I'm going to say negative multiplied by row 2 becomes my new row 2. That just means change the signs. So now I have 1, 1, -1, solid line 0. Underneath 0, 1, -1, -1. Underneath 0, 0, 3, 0. Okay, now watch this and remember this. I need to turn that into a 1, right? All I have to do is divide by what's there. 3 divided by 3 gives me a 1, right? So I'm going to go row 3 divided by 3 gives me my new row 3. You can divide by a number. You can't divide a row by a row. Okay? 1, 1, -1, solid line 0. Underneath 0, 1, -1, -1. Divide the third row by 3. 0 divided by 3 is a 0. 0 divided by 3 is a 0. 3 divided by 3 is a 1. 0 divided by 3 is a 0. Okay? Now we're done. Now we just work our way up. So this bottom line tells you that Z is 0. So I'm going to come up to where I'm going to write my answer, and I put in a 0. Up above that, that means 1y minus Z, which is a 0, is equal to -1. Minus 0 doesn't do anything, so that just gives you y equals -1. Now do your x at the very top. That's going to be x plus y, that's -1, minus z, that's -0, I'm not even going to write that down, is equal to 0. So that gives me x equals 1. So I've got 1, -1, and 0. Is that it? That's it? How do you feel? Are you good? Lydia, I could look at you, and it's so funny because sometimes things just click for people. Like Lydia, she's a rock star. She could probably go right into Friday's lesson right now and be totally good. Friday's lesson is just like this. It's just a a lot more numbers. You just have to do more things. It's not any tougher. It's just longer. Okay? 2 seconds. Sorry, let me save this really fast.